Hey everyone, for today's video I will be talking about environmental policies and strategies. This presentation is mainly based on the 4th National Sustainable Development Strategy or NSDS under United Nations in New Zealand to reduce the impact of environmental degradation across the globe. I will talk about the National Sustainable Development Strategy, mainly on the 4th strategy, the Pacific country that practices this strategy, which I chose New Zealand to talk about in this video. New Zealand's brief country profile, the environmental law, its environmental policies, and the two policies they came up with, and the conclusion to this presentation. Without further ado, let's begin into today's video. Now the next video that I will be showing you guys is just a basic summary to get you to understand what the National Sustainable Development Strategies are. According to the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, the National Sustainable Development Strategy is a coordinated, participatory, and iterative process of thoughts and actions to achieve economic, environment, and social objectives in a balanced and integrated manner. Basically, it is a plan established by the United Nations for member countries to formulate laws and policies in addressing climate change issues. There are 4 types of strategies, and I chose the 4th strategy to talk about. This strategy is mainly practiced by the developed countries in which their focus is on the well-being of the environment. They aim to reduce environmental degradation, ensure clean and safe drinking water, decrease greenhouse gas emissions, and achieving economic stability. An example of a Pacific island country is New Zealand. According to Wendy McGuinness in 2019, her findings revealed that the NSDS are fully implemented in New Zealand. New Zealand is located on the South Pacific Ocean to the southeast of Australia. New Zealand is highly dependent on the agricultural sector. According to the Sustainable Governance Indicators 2020, New Zealand exports dairy, eggs, and honey, which totals up to $10.6 billion, which is 28.5% of the total exports. It also exports meats, which adds up to $5.2 billion, which covers 14% of the exports. Fish is also exported out, which makes up $1.1 billion, which is 2.8% of the total exports. According to a research carried out by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, 49% of greenhouse gas emissions in New Zealand is from the agricultural sector. New Zealand signed a number of agreements with the United Nations on environmental protection, including the Paris Agreements. New Zealand has recently amended its 2012 Act on Climate Change in 2019, which is the Climate Change Response or Zero Carbon Amendment Act 2019. It provides a framework for New Zealand to develop and implement suitable policies that will contribute towards the Paris Agreement to limit the global average temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, allowing New Zealand to prepare and adopt the effects of climate change and to reduce emissions of greenhouse gases to zero by 2050. From the Act came the two environmental policies that are currently taking place in New Zealand. The two policies are Clean Car Program and the 1 Billion Trees Fund. This is an example of the different clean cars in New Zealand, or the environmental safe cars. Proposed Clean Car Standard was introduced by the government in 2021 that regulates importers to reduce CO2 emissions of vehicles entering New Zealand to specific standards and targets. It is a way for the government encouraging its citizens into purchasing electric vehicles and petrol hybrids, which gives off less greenhouse gases, by setting up this scheme to help people to help buy the required vehicle at a lower price. Hybrid car, as it is known, is a car with two or more engine technologies that basically consist of an electronic motor-driven engine, the conventional petrol-powered or diesel-powered engine. These engines are designed to work hand-in-hand to help reduce the consumption of petrol as well as reducing carbon dioxide emissions. The 1 Billion Trees Fund was introduced in 2018 with the government's funding of $24,681 million to increase tree planting across New Zealand. 4/4 of the total funding was set aside for organizations, farmers, communities, and interested individuals to enable the tree planting. Their objective is to reach 1 billion trees by 2028. According to a research done by the Forestry of New Zealand in 2019, 83,100 million seedlings were bought. The aim of this policy was to protect, improve soil water quality and other natural resources, help New Zealand meet its international climate change commitments, and to increase biodiversity. To conclude, the United Nations came up with the 4 strategies that covers 3 major areas: the economy, social, and environment of each member country. Through the Paris Agreement, New Zealand developed the Climate Change Response Amendment Act 2019, and from this act, 2 policies were introduced by the New Zealand government to combat global warming. With that, in small ways, you as an individual can help reduce greenhouse gas emissions in your area by doing smaller activities such as planting trees in your local area. Can have a bigger impact in the future and possibly help reduce climate change in the long run. Thank you, and that brings us to the end of our presentation.